In January 1959, 9 experienced hikers entered the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. Only one would return. This was not a casual trip. They were students and graduates from a respected technical institute. Most had completed extreme winter expeditions before. This was supposed to be difficult, but not deadly. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, calm, methodical, highly respected. The group planned a long ski trek through remote terrain. Temperatures were expected to drop below -30 degrees, strong winds, deep snow. Still, nothing unusual. They were prepared. Their equipment was solid. They documented everything: photos, diaries, route plans. This documentation would later become terrifying. On January 27th, they sent their last message. Everything was normal. Spirits were high. They joked. They sang. They moved deeper into isolation. After that, silence. They were expected to return by mid-February. When they did not, search teams were deployed. On February 26th, rescuers found their campsite, and immediately something was wrong. To understand what happened on Dyatlov Pass, we must return to the tent, not the bodies. The tent. Because the tent tells the first lie, and the first truth. When rescuers reached the campsite, they noticed something immediately disturbing. The tent was damaged from the inside. This is not an assumption. Investigators confirmed it. The fabric was sliced outward, multiple cuts. Chaotic, urgent. This detail eliminates many explanations. Experienced hikers never destroy their shelter, especially not in extreme cold, especially not at night. The tent was their only protection. Leaving it meant near certain death. So why did all 9 leave? Inside the tent, their belongings were neatly arranged, boots lined up, warm clothing folded, food untouched. There were no signs of struggle, no overturned items, no blood. This matters. Whatever happened was sudden, but not violent inside the tent. The group was sleeping when it began. Footprints outside told another strange story. They did not scatter. They did not run randomly. They moved downhill together, in a loose line, some barefoot, some in socks, some with only light clothing. This suggests something critical. They were not fleeing each other. They were fleeing the same thing, and they believed distance mattered more than warmth. The footprints were spaced, walking, not sprinting. That detail confuses many people. If they were terrified, why were they not running? Because extreme fear does not always cause panic. Sometimes it causes control. People flee quietly when they believe noise makes things worse. Let's talk about timing. Weather reports confirm heavy wind, low visibility, sub-zero temperatures. Avalanche is often suggested, but evidence does not support it. There was no avalanche debris. The tent was not buried. The slope angle was wrong. And most importantly, footprints remained visible. An avalanche would erase them. So what else could force 9 people out? The group descended nearly 1.5 kilometers, down into the forest. That choice matters. The forest offered 2 things: trees for cover, materials for fire. This suggests logic. They were not irrational. They were reacting to a threat they believed was temporary, something that would pass, something they could return after. Near the forest edge, the group split. This was not planned. It was survival. 2 stayed by the tree. They tried to start a fire. Evidence shows bark stripped, branches broken. Their hands were damaged, flesh torn. This was not attack. This was desperation. 3 attempted to return to the tent. Why? Because the threat seemed gone or weakened, but they never made it. They collapsed one by one, frozen. That leaves 4. The last 4 did something different. They moved deeper into the forest. They built a temporary shelter in a ravine. This required strength, time, coordination. These were not panicked people. These were survivors adapting. And then something happened to them. Something violent. Their injuries were catastrophic. Crushed ribs, severe skull fractures, but no external wounds, no broken skin. This rules out fistfights, animal attacks, knife or blunt weapon assault. The force came from pressure, not impact, like being compressed. Here is the most disturbing part. The injuries occurred after they left the tent. meaning the initial threat did not kill them. Something else did. And it happened in two phases. Phase 1, immediate evacuation from the tent. Phase 2, fatal injuries in the forest. This suggests the threat changed, or followed, or returned. Soviet investigators quietly acknowledged confusion. Witnesses later reported strange lights in the sky that night. Officially dismissed, but recorded. Radiation on clothing remains unexplained. Not enough to kill, enough to raise questions. Files were classified. Families were pressured. Discussion discouraged. The phrase used to close the case was not medical. It was political. An unknown, compelling force. This is not language of science. It is language of uncertainty. And uncertainty was not tolerated. The final 4 hikers were found months later, not on the slope, not near the tent, but deep in a ravine. By the time searchers reached them, the snow had melted enough to expose what winter had hidden. What they saw was disturbing. The bodies were not scattered. They were grouped, as if they had stayed together until the end. They had built a makeshift shelter, tree branches, snow walls, careful construction. This required time, energy, clear thinking, which means something important. They were alive and functioning long after leaving the tent. This destroys the idea that they all died quickly. Now, the injuries. One man had a crushed skull, another had multiple broken ribs, a woman had severe chest damage. Doctors described the force as extreme, comparable to a car collision. But there were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruises consistent with impact. This is critical. High force without surface damage is extremely rare. It rules out fights, falls from height, animal attacks. The ravine was shallow, not enough to cause those injuries, and there were no signs of collapse. Even more disturbing, one woman was missing her tongue, not bitten, not torn, gone. Her eyes were also missing, parts of her face destroyed. Some claim animals, but forensic reports complicate that. The damage occurred before death. Soft tissue was removed while blood was still circulating. That matters. Another hiker had similar facial damage. Again, no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. Their clothes tell another story. Some were wearing garments taken from the dead. This is logical. It shows survival thinking. They were adapting, but then something interrupted that process. Something sudden, something overwhelming. Radiation was detected on some clothing items. Not environmental, not background. Specific, localized. This was never explained. The Soviet investigation avoided conclusions. Autopsies were incomplete, reports inconsistent. Some details were removed, others classified. Families were warned, witnesses were silenced. The region was closed to hikers for years. No official reason given. Let's pause here. What do we know for certain? The hikers fled the tent suddenly. They were not panicking blindly. They attempted survival strategies. Some suffered extreme internal injuries. Evidence was hidden or dismissed. What we do not know is more terrifying. What caused the pressure injuries? Why radiation? Why missing soft tissue? Why silence? One investigator later admitted, "We understood something unusual happened, but we were not allowed to explain it." That statement alone changes everything. Because this was not a mystery they could not solve. It was a mystery they could not discuss. For decades, Dyatlov Pass remained frozen in silence. Not because there were no theories, but because no theory was safe. The Soviet Union did not tolerate uncertainty, especially not public uncertainty. So the case was closed with a phrase that explained nothing. An unknown compelling force. That statement protected the system, not the truth. In later years, scientists revisited the evidence, with modern tools, with no political pressure. Some explanations were eliminated completely. Avalanche, no physical evidence. Animal attack, no wounds. Violence, no defensive injuries. Other explanations remain possible. Severe wind phenomena, sudden pressure waves, natural forces rarely experienced by humans. One modern theory involves extreme wind patterns creating powerful air pressure. Such pressure could cause internal injuries without external wounds. It could also create sound frequencies that cause panic, disorientation, and fear. This would explain sudden evacuation, calm walking, no visible attacker. But it does not explain everything. Radiation remains unexplained, the missing soft tissue remains unexplained, the rushed investigation remains unexplained, and the silencing of witnesses remains the most disturbing detail. If the explanation was simple, why hide it? If it was natural, why classify it? The region stayed restricted, documents disappeared, memories faded. But one thing did not: the behavior of the hikers. They did not act irrationally. They acted like people responding to something real, something immediate. Their decisions make sense only if the threat was invisible. Not a creature, not a person, but a force, something they could feel but not see. That is what makes this incident terrifying. There was no enemy to fight, no escape route, only distance, cold, time. The Dyatlov Pass hikers were not careless. They were not foolish. They were experienced, prepared, and still, they were helpless. This is why the story endures, not because of mystery, but because of vulnerability. Nature does not announce itself. It does not explain. It does not care. And sometimes, it leaves no clear evidence. The Dyatlov Pass incident is not unsolved because of ignorance. It is unsolved because the truth does not fit comfortably into human understanding. 9 people entered the mountains. 9 did not return, and the mountains never spoke. End.